this is my good friend, Charlie Williams. And it's funny because as I was getting ready to read this, I was like, man, he downplayed this a lot. You're going to hear a lot about what this guy has done, but really quick, his very brief and humble bio. Charlie Williams is the program director of Warrior Reunion Foundation. He is a Marine veteran and former police officer. He holds degrees in aviation technology and aviation maintenance and is a guest lecturer for the Military Family Research Institute at Purdue University, providing instruction on military culture and transition difficulties to behavioral health clinicians. Please welcome to the virtual stage my good friend, Charlie Williams. Charlie, the stage is yours.
Hey, thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it. I don't know how humble I'm being. But what I want to talk about tonight is really just transition, some of the difficulties that I faced in transitioning, and just kind of the stigma that can come with being a veteran in this day and age. So, as a society, especially today, we receive much of our impression on something from the media or entertainment. For veterans, really since Vietnam, that goes in one of two directions. One is the unbelievable feats and heroism portrayed in, Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers, Black Hawk Down, and then on the other end of the spectrum is, the broken veteran film and that narrative, with Deer Hunter or Thank You for Your Service and a new movie that came out called Cherry. I'm not giving my reviews on some of these movies. But there's nothing really there for the vast majority of us that are in the middle of these extremes. Just the regular veteran that, rose their right hand, did their time in service, got out honorably, and just want to transition back into the civilian world. My story is really not that unique for the post 9/11 veteran community. In the fall of 2001, I was going into my senior year of high school. I'd been planning on attending Purdue University, going through ROTC, and flying in the Marine Corps is what I wanted to do. My grandfather, on my dad's side, he flew B-24 bombers in the Pacific, and I spent my summers as a kid going all over the country to air shows with him. And that's kind of where my love of aviation started. The events of September 11th, 2001 really kind of changed that trajectory to a degree. I didn't know it yet. But it did reaffirm that was the path that I wanted to take. In the fall of 2002, I was sticking with the plan. I enrolled in Purdue and planned on going into ROTC. Pretty quickly, though, in that fall, as I'm watching, troops engage in Afghanistan, the buildup for what looked like the inevitable invasion of Iraq, I became pretty disinterested in school. The parties and things like that, I was having a hard time connecting at that time when, I'm seeing all these incredibly important and world-changing events going on and that I wanted to be a part of. So I remember being very dissatisfied in January of 2003. I had planned on sticking it out a little bit longer, but I just had enough. So I went in and I met the Marine recruiter on January 11th. I enlisted on January 15th, and I was at Marine Corps boot camp on January 27th as an infantry option. I watched shock and awe the invasion of Iraq from boot camp, and less than a year later, found myself in Iraq as a member of the 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. So from January of 2004 to January of 2007, I went on 3 7-month-long deployments. I was in Fallujah in 2004, Ramadi in 2005, and we spent some time in the Philippines in 2006. I loved my time in the Marine Corps. I'd actually begun to think that this may just be the career path for me, and that's where I want to stay. But in the summer of 2006, my wife and I found out we were pregnant with our first child, and with that op tempo, as you can see, over 36 months, I was gone for at least 21 of them, and that doesn't include training. I decided that op tempo wasn't sustainable for raising a family, and so I decided to get out and begin our family. There are really just 5 points that I want to make sure that I highlight during this talk. There are some of the difficulties in transition for veterans. fighting stigma, veteran concerns, why a veteran can be a force multiplier in your organization if you use them correctly, and how you can really help to bridge this gap between the veteran and civilian population. So in my opinion, the biggest reason a veteran has difficulty transitioning is the loss of the group, or for lack of a better term, their tribe. You not only spend the most transformative time in your life with these people, but you do so halfway around the world and in continuous danger, where your survival depends on them and they depend on you. Sebastian Junger has a great TED Talk where he talks about this. He spent time with an Army platoon in Afghanistan, and he really sums it up pretty well. And I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but the gist of it is that it isn't friendship, which you can't relate to somebody that hasn't experienced it. People think of being in a platoon together, that you're just really good friends. It's not that. Friendship is a group of people with common interests that like to hang out together, and that can grow, and you can be really close friends, but it's different. In your platoon, you have people of every race, every socioeconomic background, religion, and the list goes on and on. Some guys don't even like each other, but that they would die for you and you would die for them. It's an incredibly pure form of love that really the only other thing that I think is similar is having your own children. It is that, just like I said, you can not like the guy. You can think that they're just terrible. You would never hang out with them outside of this situation. But at the same time, you would lay down your lives for each other, it's incredibly unique. A good way to highlight that is in Ramadi in 2005. I was corporal of the guard. We had a vehicle control checkpoint near a bridge that on the north side of Ramadi that we controlled traffic coming in and out, going over the Euphrates. We also, as part of that, had a platoon of Iraqi soldiers that we were in charge of that would do the checking of the vehicles at the time we were trying to build up their army so they'd be self-sustainable. Good friend of mine, our corpsman, we'd been roommates back before the Fallujah deployment, so it's over a year before. Really close, really good guy. He was a kid from Guam, and I'm a kid from Indiana. Like there's no way that outside of these circumstances we'd have been as close as we were. But one of my Iraqi soldiers takes a shot when he's standing out on an exposed roadway during the vehicle checkpoint. He hits the ground before I even hear the shot. So you instantly know it's a sniper. So all the Iraqi soldiers are shooting in every direction. They're not that well trained. My Marines are not returning fire at this time. They don't see anybody yet to do so. So I run downstairs from the command post where I'm watching all this. I grab our quick reaction force guys. So basically all the guys that aren't on post, it's their time to rest. And I see Doc. He's sitting there in a pair of the Marine Corps PT shorts. If you ever seen them, they're like swim trunks from the 50s for guys, very short, and a t-shirt. And so Doc throws his flak on. All he has is his pistol, and we go running outside to try and do what we can to save this Iraqi soldier. As we get out there, we start getting more gunfire from this palm grove that's next door. And the first thing I said when I'd gotten outside was I found the Iraqi soldier, and I told him to get his guys inside because at that time they were causing more danger to our guys than they even were to the insurgents. By the time Doc and I got up to the road to this Iraqi soldier that had been shot, we start dragging him off the road, and there's nobody else out there except us. So they heeded the order to get out of harm's way very quickly. So we're dragging him off the road, and it was at that time I realized that Doc and I both ran out there with nothing but our pistols. And there's a little bit of delay between my Marines getting back out there. So Doc and I get the Iraqi soldier off into defilade where Doc can start treating him. I actually ended up using that Iraqi soldier's AK-47 to suppress the insurgents until my Marines could get out there and fortify the position. Things calmed down. A couple other Marine platoons had arrived. We move inside, and Doc and I are sitting on a cot inside and just kind of have that adrenaline dump. and you're just kind of thinking over. We're not saying a word to each other. We're just sitting there staring at the wall. And most of us during that time used chewing tobacco, and my brand of choice was Copenhagen. And we knew each other so well that Doc knew where I kept my Copenhagen in my cargo pants. And I had blood all over my hands from the Iraqi soldier, and I said to Doc, "Hey man, I could really use a dip." And out saying a word, Doc reaches in my pocket, pulls it out, gets a pinch out, puts it in my lip for me, and we just sit there, just next to each other, staring at the wall, not saying a word, and it's just dead quiet. And then I said something like, "Man, that was really crazy." And Doc looks at me and he just goes, "It was. But Chuck, don't ever ask me to do that again." But the funny part is he wasn't talking about running out there. He was talking about having me asking him to put a chew in my lip for me. So that's the kind of closeness that you get to where you know what each other's thinking. Nothing is off limits, and you would do anything for each other. So when you get out of the military and you come back to the civilian world, even the most well-intentioned people don't know how to treat you. You receive the whole range of emotions from other people. You know, you receive sympathy or anger, sometimes jealousy. You know, there is always someone, no matter how well-intentioned, that will ask you if you know somebody that was killed, if you killed anybody, or you get the, you know, "I would have joined but" story. None of these things are solicited. It's just if somebody finds out you're a veteran, these are the type of questions or statements you're going to get from people. After I, you know, Mark mentioned that I was in law enforcement. After I left that and went back to school at 33 years old, I'm sitting there in class, and some 18-year-old kid, I never had a conversation with him outside of something, you know, specific, you know, class related. We're sitting there waiting for the professor to come in, and he just turns around and he says to me, "So you're a soldier or something like that, right?" I was like, "Well, I was a Marine." Like I'm not one of those guys, you know, the soldier Marine thing that gets all you know, upset about it. But he's like, "Yeah, it's like the same thing." And he's, "Did you ever kill anybody?" I'm like, "Look, kid, like we don't know each other like that. Like, what are you getting at?" And then he goes on to say something like, "Well, have you ever thought about karma? Like, does that ever worry you?" And it's just, you know, and luckily the professor walked in right there. I wasn't upset about it, but it's just, man, I'm just trying to sit here and get a degree. Like, why do you feel like you can even ask me that question? You wouldn't ask somebody else something that personal. But it's not just, you know, you could count that story off to just a dumb kid, but that happened to me when I was a police officer. I remember we were qualifying with our patrol rifles, so our AR-15s one time, and we had some dead time during the range, which we knew about the day before. And a couple of the guys knew that I had some historic rifles, infantry rifles from World War I and World War II. I think they're really neat. I like the idea of shooting these historic rifles to kind of feel what those guys back then felt and dealt with. And guys were interested. So I brought my rifles out to the range during that dead time with my ammo, and I'm get them out of my trunk, and I'm walking them up to the range during the lunch break so that other guys can shoot them that they were interested in. And one of the sergeants makes this comment that's just, "Hey, Charlie, what are you doing? This isn't Fallujah." You know, and it's still, I know he doesn't mean anything, but like, man, I just want to, I'm here now. Like, I don't, that's not a definition of me. And so as a whole, I think most of us are very proud of our service. I certainly am. I wouldn't trade it for the world. But I don't want that to be the title of the book, of the story of my life. You know, a significant chapter, absolutely. But that time we spent, while a defining moment, shouldn't be how we are defined. And, you know, during World War II, around 12% of the population served. So even if you didn't, chances are a family member, a friend, you know, the kid down the street, you had some familiarity with it. Someone you knew personally that made it real. Since 9/11, less than 0.5% has served. And that isn't, I'm not saying that's necessarily a negative thing. I think most of us that did serve are very glad that we have an all-volunteer military, and that the vast majority do not have to do the things that we did or make the sacrifices that we did. That's part of why we rose our right hand. But the flip side is that there really isn't a way to put on a resume when applying for a job that I was trained as a JTAC and a JFO, deconflicting the battle space while controlling a $30 million jet and an entire battery of artillery at the age of 22. There's no way to translate that. So veterans are extremely resilient, and if nothing else, know how to work when they are motivated and feel valued. If you've created a solid organizational structure and it's a good place to work, chances are a veteran will probably be your best employee. So really, in closing, I think veterans come from all walks of life and are in most ways just like everyone else. The difference is that they have some very unique experiences and skills that can benefit you. Disregard preconceived notions that you may have from the media. I cringe every time I hear a pundit start a sentence with "as a veteran, I." You know, we're all unique, all have different perspectives, different politics, different everything. We are individuals, so get to know us.